Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our Success and Leadership Breakfast. My name is Mark Pownell. I'm CEO at Business News. Before starting, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land on which this event takes place. Our guest today is Mike McKenna, CEO of Perth Stadium. No doubt today will reflect on his recent journey as CEO of the new stadium and share with us some of the challenges of completing such a project and developing such a business from scratch. A warm welcome, please, to our special guest, Mike McKenna. A warm welcome too to our Success and Leadership Series host sponsor, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and also to our series sponsors, Brian Burke Homes, Bupa, EY, WA Super. Paul Owen will be conducting the vote of thanks today on behalf of WA Super. Also a welcome to City of Perth, a new sponsor for this event. And thank you too to the Hyatt Regency for supporting this event. Please join me in thanking our sponsors. Now, for a brief update on what's happening at Business News, in our events in February this year, we discussed the WA property market with a panel including Hayden Groves, Paul Blackburn, Vivian Yap, and CBA economist Michael Workman. In April, our breakfast was held in conjunction with the International World Wide Web Conference. Our speakers from Google, Wikipedia, LinkedIn, and Snap discussed how data analysis is driving societal change. And in July, we had Richard Goyder, retiring CEO of Wesfarmers and incoming chair of the AFL, very relevant today, and Woodside. He delighted our guests with his insight on leadership, his time at Wesfarmers, and what his future holds. For our next Success and Leadership Breakfast, we have secured Professor Fiona Wood, as our guest presenter in November. As you're aware, she runs a business, a foundation, a family, and has developed a revolutionary spray-on skin product. So come along to the breakfast to hear the Fiona Wood story and how she's built a start-up business around medical technology, and tickets are on sale for that. We look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, the 28th of November, here at the Hyatt. Our 40 Under 40 Awards is now open for entry nominations. The 40 Under 40 Awards have been recognising excellence among WA's young business elite since 2002. So if you know someone under the age of 40 working for a WA-based company, encourage them to apply. Please consider your colleagues and your networks and encourage worthy candidates to enter. This month, Business News has launched an announcement service for companies that want to tell our market about once-off news such as appointments, launches and deals. For a fee, a user can upload their announcement to a dedicated page on our website, and their headline will be included at the bottom of our email, which goes daily to more than 47,000 people. It's just one of our many sponsored content products for our users to reach our readers. You'll find this on our website or ask our subscriptions team. To see a list of guests in attendance this morning, browse to the URL that can be found on the back of your program. And do you have a question for Mike McKenna today? You're welcome to tweet to #BNIQ or text your questions to the number shown on the inside of your program. And of course, and having been up on stage, I know this is very important, you are welcome to stand up and ask questions from the floor when we bring out the microphones at the end. Breakfast will be served shortly, at which point business cards will be collected for today's door prizes. Today we have 2 door prizes. The Hyatt have donated 1 night's accommodation in a Hyatt Regency Club room, plus breakfast for 2. As well, the Perth Stadium has donated a site tour, so you can go and visit the stadium before it's open to the public. That is a fascinating behind-the-scenes tour of the new venue. In about a week, you'll be invited to participate in a 2-minute feedback survey, and 1 lucky participant will receive a complimentary subscription to Business News or an upgrade to their existing subscription. Please enjoy your breakfast, and we'll be back at 8 a.m. for the main show. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again to Commonwealth Bank, host sponsor, and to all our series sponsors. Now it's time to introduce our guest. Firstly, I'll introduce Mark Beyer. Mark is our editor at Business News, and he will facilitate the discussion. Mark has been with Business News for almost 30 years and has been a journalist for almost 30 years and been with Business News for a decade and a half. Please welcome him to the stage. And our guest today is Mike McKenna, CEO of Perth Stadium. Mike McKenna joined Venues Live in November last year as Chief Executive Officer of the new Perth Stadium after more than 11 years in a variety of roles with Cricket Australia. Prior to joining Cricket Australia, Mike was General Manager, Commercial Operations with the Essendon Football Club, National Marketing Manager for professional services firm Arthur Andersen, and has held a variety of sales and marketing roles with Black & Decker and Carter Holt Harvey. As Chief Executive Officer of the Perth Stadium, Mike is building a team of professionals who will have the huge job of preparing the venue to become operational later and then run one of the most sophisticated stadiums in the world. Please welcome Mike to the stage.
Well, welcome Mike.
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome everybody to the breakfast. Well, you all saw there a little preview of some of the features of the new Perth Stadium. I was lucky enough a couple of weeks ago, you gave me a tour through the stadium itself, and I think like most of us, we've driven past the stadium and from the outside it looks very impressive, but nothing beats actually going in there and seeing it from the inside. And in fact, I'm wondering in the audience here, hands up if you've been lucky enough to have a preview tour of the stadium already. Okay, we've got a few people there, so I'm sure that's whet your appetite. So look, we're going to talk a lot more about the stadium a little later on, but I'd like to start off by having a bit of an introduction to yourself, Mike.
Sure.
I suspect a lot of people might be wondering, how do you become qualified to be Chief Executive of a major stadium? And I know early in your career you started in sales and marketing roles, even worked with the famous Maggie Tabberer at one stage. Could you tell us a little bit about your early career?
Yes, well, I think my early career probably did help me on this journey, but in terms of am I qualified to run the stadium, don't tell anyone, I'm probably learning. Got training wheels on at the moment, but look, to be honest, my early career was the sales and marketing roles, and I think that anybody who's been in sales and marketing roles know that when you're at the coalface dealing with customers on a regular basis, you actually do get a feel for what people are looking for, and you always maintain an awareness that the products and services you're delivering need to be made tailored for the customers you're appealing to. And I think that's a lesson I learned pretty early, and it's one that stuck with me all through my career, and it certainly is one that's absolutely applicable when it comes to operating the stadium. Okay.
Now, you moved into the sporting arena through the Essendon Football Club. How did that opportunity arise? And tell us a little bit about what you did there.
Yeah, well, at that time I was working for Arthur Andersen, and I was had the challenging task of helping accountants sell themselves, which was not an easy task. At that time, Arthur Andersen was probably the premier of the professional services firms, and doing a pretty good job. So we were activating their sponsorship of the Sydney Olympics at the time, and that role was coming to an end. I was looking for something else to do, and I was approached by a headhunter with the task of, the challenge of trying to find someone to help market a football club. At that time, my perception of football club marketing was probably sausage sizzles, cake stands, and trying to raise a few bucks to keep a team on the field. And I had really no idea of the level of sophistication, diversity of the role of running a football club. And I certainly have a much greater appreciation of that now after spending 7 years at Essendon. And primarily the challenge at the time was to move the club from its home ground at the MCG to what is now Etihad Stadium, which at the time was Dockland Stadium, Colonial Stadium, and then subsequently Telstra Dome. And it was quite a challenge for a club who had a very large supporter base, who didn't think they would fit into the new stadium. We had a real logistical challenge, and it's one that I know that the Dockers and Eagles are facing right now in moving from Domain Stadium to the new Perth Stadium. And it's a really complicated task, ensuring all your fans have a move that makes them happy. They end up sitting beside the people they're used to sitting beside, and continue to have the great experiences they have as a tribe when you're watching a football game. So that experience at that time was a great one. We moved on, and at Essendon Footy Club, I was lucky enough to be there during a great era with some absolutely unbelievable players. We won the 2000 Premiership. We got bowled over by Carlton by a point in the preliminary final on a day where Jeff Kennett lost the unlosable election and the Bombers lost the unlosable preliminary final. But yeah, won the Premiership the subsequent year, played in the grand final the year after that. It was a great time. And I noticed recently in the media that team, the Essendon 2000 team, was voted the Premiership Team of the Decade, and I think went through that season losing only one match by a goal to the Bulldogs late in the season, but a phenomenal period of time. I had employees who I picked up who probably went about 30 odd games in the club pre-season practice matches and Premiership matches without having experienced a loss. It was a fantastic period.
And yet, after all that success at Essendon, you then took on a new challenge. You joined Cricket Australia, and one of the things you did there was help set up the Big Bash League. So, was it hard to leave Essendon, particularly given all the success? And then, what was the challenges of setting up something brand new like the Big Bash League like?
Yeah, I think when you get to that point where you've done a lot of things at a particular place, and a lot of people have experienced this, you're looking for the next challenge. And I was lucky enough to be approached to join Cricket Australia, and it was a very similar role at the time, heading up the commercial operations. But in a time where cricket was going through a time of change, and they're looking for people who can help them transfer to a much more customer-focused organisation. They were previously pretty operationally oriented, trying to put on test matches, sell tickets, and move teams around. But they wanted to start the process of engaging with fans to grow the game. And I think at that time we had about 500,000 people playing cricket around the country. Now they've got about 1.5 million people playing cricket, and a fairly significant and growing percentage being female. And partway through that challenge, the Big Bash became an opportunity. People were starting to play 2020 cricket, and we'd dabbled with it in Australia. We weren't quite sure what to do with it. And around 2010, we sort of got access to some research that showed that kids particularly were not engaged with cricket. And I think anybody who's a parent or might have grown up that time would know, just for their own experiences, that people weren't playing cricket in the backyards or the cul-de-sacs or going with their mates till dark with a cricket bat and replicating a test match the way that generations before had done. And I think cricket realised that we had a real challenge engaging youth, and we had a real challenge engaging mothers who thought that cricket was a pretty boring game and didn't really want to take their kids and spend hours on the sideline on a Saturday watching cricket when they had plenty of other things to do with their time. So the game knew that it needed to make some change, and we had a tool, but what we needed is the right strategy to deliver that. And a group of us, including our strategy team, really came up with a wild idea, which is basically dumping 120 odd years of history of state cricket and inventing a new competition. And I think that's where my and others' basic marketing training came to the fore. I mean, that to me was an exercise in marketing 101. That you identify with your target audience, you look at what they are missing, what they need, what they want, and you try and put it together. And I think for what's perceived as a really traditional sport, cricket is a game that relies on its tradition for its relevance, but cricket has also been a great innovator. And when you look at one-day cricket back in the Packer days, what it took to get that up, and what subsequently happened with T20 cricket, it shows it actually is open for innovation, but individuals within the business really resisted, and it was a really tough time, and it took some brave decisions by the board and the CEO to back the things that we were suggesting that we do. And we only had 14 months from the time the board decided to let us have a crack at this to putting the first game on, where we had to invent 8 teams, build brands, get uniforms, make rules, and put together teams and sell it, moving from a 6-state team competition to an 8-team city-based competition, and all the way through there were hurdles. There were barriers put up by people who just didn't think the change was going to work, who would prefer to sell off the rights of teams to an Indian investor and take some money before it all collapsed around them and they could keep the money and not have to worry about the comp. A lot of things occurred in that time. We got through that. We had a couple of great seasons on Fox Sport, and then Channel 10 bought the rights and the whole thing exploded. And it is a game that was set up for the kids of Australia to really enjoy, and for their mothers to be able to say, well, cricket's not so bad, I can take my kids along, and maybe a few of them will say, I'll let my kids play cricket. And subsequently we brought on the Women's Big Bash League, which was another challenge of a smaller scale, but a really important decision. And you can see now, for those who follow women's sport, that the Women's Big Bash League has driven some magnificent salary increases and given women a chance to build a career out of cricket, which is absolutely critical. And I think it jump-started the AFL's women's competition, and it has certainly set a benchmark for other sports to follow with women's salaries. So there's a whole raft of things that I was involved with at cricket that I'm really, really proud of. They'll look back on, and I think that people that work with me at the time, I've encouraged to say, this is a moment in your life that you should never forget. You should be really proud of, because it's made a massive change in the game of cricket, and hopefully has some effect on society. And I think the team I've got here now in this Perth Stadium, we're saying the same thing. You know, a real chance to do something completely different.
And in light of that history, I'm sure you'll be looking forward to having 2020 cricket matches and women's cricket matches at the new stadium, and hopefully filling it up.
Certainly am, and women's sport of all types. You know, we announced, I think it was yesterday, time flies really quickly, that the first football game at the stadium will be an AFL women's match. Fremantle are playing against a team yet to be determined, but we are hoping that that's going to be an event that draws a crowd that sets a massive benchmark for women's sport in Australia in terms of attendance. AFL are talking about 30. We're going to be planning for a lot more than that, because it's a great opportunity for people to come along and look at the stadium in football mode for the very first time, but also to support women's sport. And I think a great opportunity. If we get 50,000 people, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. Now, focused on your current role, now the company Venues Live won the contract to run the stadium, and you're part of Venues Live.
Correct.
So perhaps you could just tell the audience a little bit more about who that company is, who's behind it, and what else they do.
Sure. Well, Venues Live is now a privately owned company. It was owned by an investment organisation who started the management of the company when they bought the rights to build and own ANZ Stadium in Sydney, which at the time was the Olympic Stadium. So the team managing Venues Live now is managing the stadium in Sydney from prior to the Olympics, right through the Olympics to today. The stadium itself was bought from that organisation by the government in New South Wales about 8 months ago, and the management team have then organised a management buyout. So we're a privately owned company. We run ANZ Stadium for the New South Wales government. We run Perth Stadium for the West Australian government, and right at the moment we're very interested in looking at other stadiums around the world to which we can leverage our management expertise. But we have a great deal of expertise in acquiring events for venues, for staging great events for fans' enjoyment, monetising those, providing a return to our stakeholders, in this case the governments, New South Wales and WA, and hopefully building out other businesses. We run a very strong catering business in New South Wales out of ANZ Stadium, catering for a large number of stadiums and businesses around Sydney. And our ambition here, given that we've been given the largest kitchen in Perth, is to do something similar here over time. But first thing, we've got to provide a great experience for fans coming to sports and entertainment events at the stadium.
Okay. Now, Mike, how are things going? The construction seems to be progressing fairly well. We'll talk about the pedestrian bridge later, but the stadium itself, when do you think things will be finished, and how's it all coming together?
Yeah, look, first of all, it's coming together really well, and I know most people would have driven past it, and you can't help but be impressed. I think it's an unbelievably great architectural design, and it fits perfectly in its location, and it represents WA in a brilliant way in its design. And I think there's a lot of credit goes to the West Stadium Consortium for both the design, Hassel Cox Architects, but also Brookfield Multiplex and the build. The quality of the build is outstanding, and I think when you go into the stadium and you see the way it's fitted out and compare it with anything else you might have experienced in stadia and buildings around the world, you'll be impressed. You can't help but be impressed. They've done a great job. It's coming in on time and on budget. In fact, it's coming in early. It was originally scheduled to be complete for the AFL season. We weren't that far away from getting it ready for the Ashes Test match. But while it hasn't been yet confirmed, we've still got to get across a few issues. The builders have got to get to a point of technical completion and then commercial acceptance. We're very confident that the first major sporting event will be a one-day international cricket match between Australia and England late in January. And it'll be preceded by the Public Open Day, which the Premier announced a couple of weeks ago, where the people of WA will get a chance to come in and look at the venue at no cost. There'll be free public transport, free access, and a chance to look at the public areas of the stadium, enjoy the parks and precincts, and have a bit of a light show, hopefully before the Premier actually declares the stadium open later that day.
So 4 months to go.
Well, thanks very much.
Counting down.
Yeah. Yeah, we count Mondays to go, and there aren't many of those left. So we're glad that sort of the date of technical completion has sort of slightly moved, so we can actually have a few more Mondays. But there's an awful lot of work going on. There's about 1,100 builders inside the building at the moment, all working furiously, attaching wires, putting up walls, inserting glass, painting things, and getting the place ready. Right at the moment, our team is spending a lot of its time in procurement. We've got about $10.8 million of fit out, materials, everything from 15,000 spoons to an ambulance cart to a whole range of things we've got to put into the stadium to make sure it's ready to go on the first day. One of the big challenges we've got is about 20-odd thousand glasses, which will probably all come in boxes with those little stickers on. And so someone's got to get those stickers off, wash the glasses, and put them in the right rooms. So there's no end of challenges and some really exciting stuff and some really mind-blowing challenges we've got to deal with. But yeah, that's one of the great things we're doing now. We're spending probably about $20 million on supply contracts, which we're awarding over time. And we're probably over the next 5 years, we'll spend about $150 million. A lot of that is going to be food and beverage to feed the very large numbers of people who come into both our public and our premium areas to eat and enjoy the matches. And hopefully eat something quite unique and have a great culinary experience, whether you're sitting in a premium space or you're buying one of our loaded hot dogs from one of the premium one of the public outlets. We think the food and beverage will be quite a unique experience.
Okay. So just further to that, for people who might think a big sporting stadium, they're all much of a muchness, could you give us a few insights into what are some of the things that make Perth Stadium unique and really special?
Well, I think there's some, first of all, if you can sit anywhere in the stadium, you're going to get a great view of the action. You're going to be sitting in a comfortable seat that's wider than normal, and you're going to have a cup holder in every seat. So, that's a major feature for a lot of people, wanting to have somewhere where to put their beer or their soft drink or their water so they don't have to kick it around under their feet. But from a design perspective, there's a team of people who spent a lot of time looking at the best designs around stadiums around the world and brought a lot of those things together in one venue. So one of the really unique spaces, if you're lucky enough to be invited to the locker room, it's a room at grass level where you can watch the players warm up through glass in their kick-up areas if it's a footy game, or if it's a cricket game, watch them have a bit of a hit before they go out. In footy mode, the teams will run out through that function room onto the ground, and then you'll be able to walk outside alongside the interchange benches with your plastic cup of beer, and you'll be able to sit and watch virtually on the boundary, which is quite a unique experience. I've seen it in a couple of stadiums around the world. Inside that room, there's also a room which will be where they hold the post-match media conference. So again, if you're lucky enough to be invited to that space, you'll be able to watch close up the questions and answers of the coaches after the match. So that's quite a unique space. There's another one, which is a very small space called the Coaches Club. About 60 seats, great seats, right between the two coaches' boxes, which are all glass. So if you're in that space and you're there at a derby match and you're able to sit there, you'll be able to see through the glass, assuming coaches don't cover it up with paper. Both coaches banging the tables, issuing instructions and making sure that the game is running to plan for them. And you'll be able to see the face of the victor and obviously that of the defeated coach at the end of the game. So a really unique space there. We've got amazing function room. Part of our business is meetings and special events. We have a 1,200 seat dining room, which is fully fitted out with blackout curtains, drop down screens, everything you need for a major conference. But the key feature of that is it's floor to ceiling, wall to wall glass overlooking the river and the city of Perth and East Perth. And it gives you a unique perspective of Perth. And I've heard people who've lived here for a long time saying they've never seen Perth look like that. So be able to bring meetings and functions, not just from Perth businesses, but from businesses around the world into that function room, gives us a chance to really add to the inventory for conferences and events that's available here in Perth. So completely unique spaces, amazing views. And right above that is a terrace where the public will be able to, on a match day at level 5, buy their beer and at half-time walk out and overlook the city and the river from that terrace. And we've also got 2 standalone restaurants on the concourse of the stadium, also looking over the city in East Perth. So on a non-match day, you'll be able to book into our a la carte restaurant and have a meal there, and hopefully bring your friends or business colleagues from interstate and overseas and show them one of the really unique views of Perth, dining in a great location with some great chefs providing some fantastic West Australian produce as part of the cuisine offering. So some really unique places. But I would say when you go into a stadium, if you've been to stadiums around the world, you're going to find space, you're going to find light, colour. You're never more than 40 metres from a bathroom or from a food and beverage outlet. You're not going to miss the action. And one thing for the ladies in the room, if you've been to Subiaco Oval and you've had to deal with the challenges of finding one of the 201 women's bathrooms, there are 758 women's bathrooms at this stadium. There are more women's bathrooms than men's. And I think even for the guys in the room, you can have a beer or two and you know you're not going to have to queue up for a bathroom. It's going to be close by, you're not going to miss the action, you're going to have a great time.
Sounds good.
It is good.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about the big events that are going to be held there, and we've talked a bit about AFL and there's cricket, but could you give us a broader sense of, because part of your mandate, I believe, is to, if you like, create activity in that whole precinct, so both inside the stadium itself and in the surrounding parklands.
Sure.
So how broad is your role, and what can you do there?
Yeah, look, it's as broad as we can imagine and as people can bring us opportunities. So I think one of the most important things to understand is this $1.3 billion investment by the state government, and if you're all taxpayers in this room, it's your money in your stadium. Our job is to bring economic benefit to the state through the stadium. So we're looking at major events, and football and cricket are part of that, but other sports and entertainment events are that as well. Our job is to bring people from interstate and overseas and to get them to spend their hard-earned here in Perth and hopefully travel further afield in WA to invest. So you've probably heard we've sold out 2 Ed Sheeran concerts, or virtually sold out 2 Ed Sheeran concerts. Ed Sheeran's playing 1 million concerts around Australasia. There's not a place he's not putting on 2 or 3 concerts. Yet we've sold, at the moment, about 5,500 tickets to people from interstate and overseas. And Evan Hall's here, and the work that Evan's done in the past with the Tourism Council, identifying economic value for the stadium, indicates that's worth about $12 to $15 million in just direct expenditure in West Australia, and in Perth particularly. So if we can bring more of those things, we can bring more people here, we can drive great economic value and provide a return on investment, which is exactly what the state's intended with building the stadium. So some of the other events we're running, if you look at sort of the lead up, if we open as planned and we have a one-day international cricket match against England, that'll be a great start. We'll follow that with any luck, and with the Perth Scorchers semi-final and final on the Big Bash, because that's what they do every year. So we can almost count on that. That'll be fantastic. That's pretty quickly followed by the AFL Women's match on February the 10th. We then may have another concert to precede the 2 Ed Sheeran shows. Then we've got Ed Sheeran twice, and then we've got an NRL doubleheader. And that's before the start of the AFL season. In the middle of this year, middle of 2018, the reigning English Premier League champions Chelsea will come and play Perth Glory in a match. Now that will attract fans not just from around Australia who are Chelsea fans, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, but we expect a large contingent from Asia to travel down who are absolutely rabid English Premier League fans and Chelsea fans. So people in hotel rooms, people, bums on seats, people in restaurants, people taking tours. We've then in 2019 already contracted the second of the State of Origin matches between New South Wales and Queensland. Anybody who's got any familiarity with that, they're the biggest sports events on television in Australia. You've got 2 states go absolutely nuts for it. And if we're going to find the town full, and be careful, find the town full of rabid New South Wales and Queenslanders running around looking to win the second of those matches. And after that, we've got the Bledisloe Cup between the All Blacks and the Wallabies. Always a big drawing event, one of the biggest corporate sports events in the country. And we'll have people travelling here from, again, all around the world to watch that game. And that's just before those 2 teams head off to the World Cup in Japan in 2019. So there's a program of events already in place. Now, our job, and we're pretty good at it from particularly our business in New South Wales, is to acquire other things. And anything from Nitro Circus through to more concerts, who knows. But outside the stadium, outside of the 40-odd major events we'll run inside the stadium, the precinct will be looking to attract all sorts of things from community events that are free, to paid events. So whether it be a garden festival, a wine festival, a fun run, a concert, the area around the stadium, there's about 11.6 hectares of land around which has been landscaped into parklands and playing ovals, is well set up for running all sorts of events. So our job is to bring life to the peninsula through those events. So if you're looking for a place to run an event, then we're certainly keen to talk to you about what that might be. If you're looking to run a meeting or a conference, again, this is the place to come and have a look at as part of the offering we have in Perth already. I know that there's material distributed on tables, and Nadia, who's in the room, is also manning a desk outside. You know, all sorts of inquiries. This is the time to book. If you want to have people inside the stadium and show off the stadium, which I hope you do because it's yours, now's the time to start booking those events.
Okay.
That's my sales pitch.
Okay. Well, you've got a pretty busy schedule already, but there's quite a few tweets and text messages coming through already, so don't forget that if you've got a question. And of course, later on, there'll be an opportunity to stand up and ask Mike some questions. But the tweets that have come through, there's already been a few extra suggestions about things you could do. Some from soccer fans and people who didn't follow the overnight news. The Matildas, the Australian women's soccer team, beat Brazil again, led by Perth girl Sam Kerr, 2 goals, I think. So it's an opportunity for something like the Matildas. And there was another question there about warm-up games for the Rugby World Cup, getting teams like, the Football World Cup, England, Italy, Brazil. Is there potential for those sorts of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work very closely, not only with the Tourism Council, but also Tourism WA, at looking at events that can be brought to Perth. And it's a pretty competitive industry. Around the country, governments have set up departments and they funded them to go out and acquire events. And events, big events, is what really drives economic impact. So regular sports events is great for the local community, and it will bring in people from interstate. But the big events are what's really going to make a difference. So ensuring that we remain competitive with other states with the budget, and we're grateful to hear that the new government has allocated $40 million for event funding. We've got to make sure we spend that well, we can deliver an outcome. But yes, certainly when we're chasing all sorts of events. Chelsea Football Club is one. We'll look at other EPL teams. We'll also look at Socceroos games. And particularly their qualifying run. I think ANZ Stadium in Sydney has secured the two games, local games, which we hope they have, one against Syria and one against a South American team to qualify for the World Cup. But we'll certainly be looking for those matches before they leave, and in the future, all sorts of matches that they can stage. We're looking obviously at rugby union, and we'll be looking at other sort of sporting events that we can create. And I think the AFL Women's is a good one. That is an event that will cost the state and the venue and the clubs money, but it's the right thing to do. And so we'll be looking for that as well with women's cricket and women's football. I think the Matildas, they draw a crowd. And so, if the crowd is most appropriate to be placed at Perth Stadium, we'll be looking at that. At the same time, if it's most appropriate to be played at NIB Stadium, that's probably where it'll be. We've got some other big things. The Cricket 2020 World Cup is being staged in 2020. So you can only imagine that, 2020 and 2020. There's a women's event and a men's event, and working with the state government, we're pitching for both of those. Most likely the women's events for the smaller ones at the WACA, maybe the finals at Perth Stadium, and for some of the men's events at Perth Stadium. So that sort of content is already underway. I do know that there's been talk about the FFA pitching for the Soccer Women's World Cup, and we will be definitely all over that. Okay.
Now, there was another tweet that might help to bring some perspective to this as well, because the question was, what role can you play in supporting minor sports? And the person that sent this in, I promise it wasn't a setup by me, because my favourite sport is baseball. But this person did ask about baseball.
Yeah. So
is there potential for the minor sports to be involved there, or is that not really relevant?
Look, it is relevant. I think that the challenge of a big stadium is it's expensive to open. And I think the expense comes from what it takes to man the stadium, to open the gates, to clean it and repair it. It's not an inexpensive exercise. So it is difficult for small sports with small crowds. We're certainly very encouraging, and a part of the network that Venues West has here in WA is a really rich range of different types of and different sizes of venues around the state. and it's probably best fit for size. However, part of our job is making sure we support minor sports by making sure that the major versions of those are staged here and grow the game. So baseball is one. We recently had an official from Major League Baseball visit the stadium, and we were looking at configuring the venue and how it might work for baseball. And I can tell you that it fits well. There's an area where we have the locker room, the dugouts can fit in that area, and then you're playing from that point with the home plate to second base, and a reasonably short straight hit over a home run boundary, which will make it perhaps a little bit more exciting, a few more home runs. But I was at Sydney Cricket Ground when they staged 2 baseball games, Major League Baseball games as season openers, and it was a huge hit. And I think people of Perth will respond well to that type of event function, and we think if we can have those sorts of things, that will have a flow-on effect to minor sports in Perth, as opposed to staging those games in the stadium at great expense to those sports.
Okay, good. Now, Mike, a broader issue here, you're dealing with multiple stakeholders, governments, sporting bodies, the public, and of course your business is a commercial enterprise, you're looking to make a profit. How hard is it juggling all of those competing interests and making it work for everybody?
Yeah, right now it hasn't been hard. I think the whole stadium philosophy from the very beginning was fans first. So the fans, in lots of ways, have been at front of mind in everything that's been done around the stadium and everything we continue to do. We want to make sure it's a stadium where people come, have a great time, and want to come back again, and want to advocate other people to come. From a commercial perspective, we are there to make money for the state government, and our job is to put events or find events, put them on, make money, and give it to the state, and they give us some back for the pleasure of doing it. So that is, everybody is aligned with that commercial expectation. However, the real challenge is making sure that you're not overcharging for the experience, because people won't come back. You won't fill the stadium, and only a full stadium is an efficient one. So we're working very hard on pricing. So there is no reason for anyone to come to the stadium who's used to going to the WACA or to the main stadium and paying any more for the experience than they have previously if they choose to sit in a similar seat. You will have the options, if you want to have a different experience and pay a bit more for that, but you should be able to have the same experience. We've got a food and beverage strategy which is designed to ensure that people who come along are paying no more than they were for the same experience. But we also have family-friendly food offerings, because we do know that families come to stadiums, they want to have the stadium experience of buying a bucket of chips or a hot dog or getting a soft drink for their kids, and don't want to pay a fortune for it. So we do have offerings that are low cost, that give people a chance to do that. At the same time, if you want to spend $15 on an amazing burger, we'll give you that opportunity as well. So a wide range of experiences, from cheap water, cheap burgers, cheap hot dogs, right through to premium loaded fries, loaded dogs, and some pretty special burgers. Okay.
Now, one of the long-running issues here is negotiations between the AFL clubs and the WA Football Commission and the state government. Now, can you give us any insight on where that is at, and what role you're playing in those discussions?
I'm about to leave here and go to a meeting where we hope that we'll make significant progress to finalisation of that agreement. It's not far away at all. Almost all the commercial terms are agreed and have been for some time. But there's a lot of complications. It's a challenging thing, and there's no lack of goodwill to try and achieve an outcome very shortly. But when you consider that the clubs and the West Australian Footy Commission have been at Subiaco Oval in its various forms for a very long time, and have been running that venue for themselves, and have an ongoing lease for 70 odd years remaining, to move, the change process for them to move is a big one, and they're looking after themselves, looking after their fans, looking after the future of the game. So the negotiation's been hard because they've had to get used to a different operating environment, at the same time protecting the game for the future. And so there's a lot of complications. At the same time, the state government have spent $1.3 billion building a venue for them to come into and monetise, and they should make more money from it over time. So it's been complicated. Our role as Venues Live, since we were appointed, acting as agents for the state, has been to negotiate that deal. And we've got it to the point where recently we handed it back to the state for review. The state solicitor's office have had a view, they've made a few changes, and that's the things we're nailing down at the moment. I understand the Footy Commission and the government met recently as well on that deal, which is slightly different from ours with the clubs, and I think that's pretty close to resolution. They're all tied together, and I think within a very short period of time, the Premier or others will be making a pretty positive announcement, and that will be behind us. But I can tell you what's been happening in the meantime is our team and the footy clubs and the AFL and the cricket club and the West Australian Cricket Association have been working furiously to make sure the plans are all in place so that when the deal's done, buttons pushed, everyone gets their membership information, all the corporates get their opportunities, everything then goes smoothly. And by the time we start the footy season next year, late in March, everyone will be in there having an unbelievable time. You just got to make sure that you plan your way there because, remember, it's a public transport-oriented venue, and so planning your trips is going to be a really critical part. If you try and drive onto the Burswood Peninsula, you'll find that you won't be able to find a car park. So planning your journey to the stadium is a really important part of what's coming.
Okay. Now, I'm hoping, I can throw open to the floor at this stage. Is there anybody that would like to ask a question from the floor? We'll have some microphones coming around if anybody does. We've still got some other questions that have been coming through on Twitter. So if nobody wants to jump in yet, Mike, there was a question about ticketing and the question about whether people will be able to buy, whether it's a seat or a corporate box for all events at the stadium.
Sure.
What are your plans in that regard?
Yep, so the majority of inventory at any event, whether it be a football game, cricket match or a concert, is the property of the hirer. So the hirer comes in and hires the venue on terms and they get access to those and they sell those tickets. So generally what you'll find is that you can buy a corporate box for a football season or from one of the clubs or other, and you can buy a seat for one club or the other. However, we do have the ability to sell, there's a very small number of 1,385 seats, and that happens to be the numbers in the block that we've got access to, stadium memberships, which will go on sale not long after the deal is inked with the footy clubs. That'll provide access for those people who buy those memberships to everything at the stadium at one cost, except for AFL finals tickets where you'll have a right to buy, but that'll cost you a little bit more. But that is the way to get a ticket for everything, and that is a transferable ticket. So if you want to go to 90% of things but you can't get to Ed Sheeran's second show, then you have the ability to pass it on to someone else. It's going to be a great membership. It's going to be in high demand, and I think once they sell, they won't be available for quite some time. So if you're interested, certainly register on our website, perthstadium.com.au, and you will get that offer as soon as they come available. We do also have a small number of suites which we have to sell all year round, but they're part of venue sponsorship packages, which we're in the market for at the moment. So anyone who does want to have an association with the stadium, we're in the middle to late stages of negotiating stadium sponsorship deals, which do include suites for all events at the stadium. And I certainly recommend getting in contact with us directly. And you probably express your interest through the website as well, but give us a call, and I can certainly leave the number here if anyone wants to contact us through the business news. But it's a great opportunity to associate your brand with a venue that people in Perth are going to be very proud of and love, and a great chance to transfer that emotion to your organisation. Okay. So that's my second sales pitch.
Now, we've got a question from the floor. Peter Kennedy, who normally goes down to Lathlane Park to watch the Perth Football Club. So the new stadium will be a little bit different for you, Peter.
It'll be a lot different. It'll be terrific. Mike, if we can fast forward to this time next year, or late next year, and the stadium's been in operation for close to 12 months, what sort of benchmarks will you be using to assess the success of the first year?
That's a good question. I think there'll be a number of benchmarks, and we've got a pretty long list of KPIs that we're setting for ourselves. So each of our operating departments will have their own KPIs, but the key ones for me will be customer satisfaction or net promoter score. I mean, we really want to fill the stadium, and sort of attendance numbers and revenues and bottom line profit will all be things that we're interested in. But at the end of the day, getting the feedback from the people who've attended to say that they've really enjoyed it, and that they are able to reflect some of the brand values that we're trying to build around the stadium and the park. If that's coming through in our measurements, then we'll be pretty happy that we're off to a good start. At the end of the day, if people come to the stadium and don't get the experience that they're expecting, then there's some level of disappointment. What we want is people to be absolutely engaged by it, really proud of the property they own, and we want to be advocating others to come to whatever it is that's available. We want people to be talking about coming to the stadium and the park 7 days a week. We want people who have had a great time with their kids having a kick-to-kick on the Northern Oval, or have had a barbecue, or played in the BHP on the boardwalk or in the Chevron Parklands around the stadium. I mean, if people have done those things and are talking about it in a really positive way, and we can measure those things, then we'll be very happy with the start. That's probably the top line measurement for me, Peter.
Now, Mike, as a follow-up to that, there's a tweet that is relevant. What's happening with the pedestrian bridge? Because part of that customer experience is going to be getting to and from the stadium. That's something you don't control. So,
Yep.
How can you, I guess, help to achieve a better outcome in that regard, and deal with all of the constraints around access to that location?
Yeah, so I think it's been problematic, and I don't think there's any secret to that. There's been a disappointment that it should have been in place some time ago. However, there's been a lot of work done since the government decided to change the arrangements, and the contractor has moved manufacturing from Malaysia to Perth, and using a builder or a manufacturer who has been building a lot of the steel for the stadium itself. So a lot of confidence around the site that these guys are going to do the job and do it on time, but it is complicated. For anyone who might have seen the picture of the bridge, it's a beautiful structure, and I think what doesn't tell you when you see the photographs is that it's the scale of it. So just to give you some impression, if you've seen the stadium, the top of the support arch of the bridge, or the arches of the bridge, are higher than the stadium roof. And if you put it against the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the deck of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, although they're different heights off the water obviously, the suspension arch is the same height as the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So it is a big piece of work. It's a very complicated structure, but it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And when you imagine it in place over the Swan River, where it is, to East Perth, and you can imagine TV images or photographs of the stadium, the bridge, whether it be daylight or whether it be lit at night, East Perth, Claysbrook Cove, the city night skyline with perhaps a sunset behind it, that is going to be one of the images of Perth. And I'm not allowed to use the word iconic, it's a banned word on site, so I'll struggle with something else. It's going to be a beautiful image of Perth, and it's be one that people use, and it'll be the sort of thing that when you look at images around the world of great cities, Sydney and the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, this I believe, along with Elizabeth Quay, will be one of those images that will say Perth, and will give us a chance to promote the city in a way that says Perth is alive, it's open for business, it's a happening place, you've got to come.
Image on the screen there that gave people a hint of it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yep. Now, we've got another question from the floor over here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mike. Andrew Dungy, Commonwealth Bank. Enjoyed your presentation, thank you. For many years now, I'll go to the WACA, bring my son along and other kids, and we'll sit there for the day's play at a test match and bring the esky along and dip into a bit of fruit, some grapes, biscuits, stuff, chips as you go. I'm wondering, to make the whole day's play enjoyable, will I be able to bring, when you're holding a test match, an esky with all those sorts of bits and pieces that the kids like at the U Stadium?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that we certainly will be allowing a reasonable amount of food and beverage to be brought in by patrons. I think the containers you bring them in might change, because there's the security issues associated with major facilities today a little bit more challenging. So an esky may or may not get across the line, but certainly what we're seeing in other sports venues around the world are transparent plastic carry bags. That may be where we get to, but certainly a reasonable amount of food and beverage, particularly in sealed containers, will be allowed into the venue. And I hope that you continue to come to test matches with your kids and enjoy it. And Commonwealth Bank's been a great sponsor of Test cricket for a lot of years. We've had a long association with Commonwealth Bank, and hopefully you got some tickets to get in there that were in the right spot.
Okay. Now, there was a business question that came up on the tweets about what's your strategy for procurement? I know you touched on it earlier and you mentioned a few numbers there, but what about local procurement? Have you got a strategy around maximising that?
Yes, we have. So we've spent a lot of, our procurement strategy is almost everything is available for open tender, and they've been promoted and advertised on our website, and we've had some great responses from local and interstate businesses. But in the evaluation process, we apply about 20% weighting to local supply, and that is, generating a lot of support for local business, a lot of opportunities, and a fair amount. And it's hard to say at the moment because we're still in the process of awarding a lot of our contracts, but a lot of our business is going local. And if it's not to local businesses, then the implementation is using local operators, local people, and local outlets. So we've got some pretty good announcements coming fairly soon about some of the local supply. I think some of it will surprise people, but a lot of it will just go under the radar. But what it is doing is it providing job opportunities. I mean, it's a lot of business. It's a big place, and we're consuming a lot of produce. So there are local businesses going to significantly benefit from this, which is going to create jobs both in those organisations and up and downstream from them, and we're very proud of that. We definitely want to make this place as West Australian as we can. We want people to come from overseas and interstate and have an experience. And certainly the restaurant, which we're putting out on the podium, one of the strategies there is to make sure that we're promoting West Australian produce on the menus, not just that we're buying it, we're actually promoting it. So I think as time goes by, as we award contracts, some will be high-profile public announcements, and some of them will be just in the trade. But you'll get a sense for what we're trying to do. But definitely a strong leaning towards local supply. At the same time, the price has got to be right. And what we have found is it's not hard to do that because the local businesses here are competitive, and we're awarding most of them to local businesses on the value that they're offering, as opposed to just the weighting as part of the consideration.
Okay, good opportunity then. And in terms of economic impact, at its peak, how many people would be employed, casual and full-time, at the stadium for a big event?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're our business at the moment, we're recruiting. Our current manpower roster is about 73 full-time staff. We'll probably end up early on with about 80 full-time staff. Most of them recruited locally to run all our variety of businesses, including our catering business. But from that point, when we put on a major event, it fully staffed to be about 1,860 people, casual staff working on any particular event. Now at the moment we're in the middle of recruiting a casual pool to supply that of about 2,200. So on top of that there's security staff, which will be provided by a security contractor, a large number of those, but we'll also have maintenance people. So the building or the project is a DBFM contract been awarded to West Stadium. As part of that, Brookfield Global Integrated Services are providing the maintenance services for 25 years on a contract. So they'll have a large number of their staff as well maintaining the facility. And then once the event's over, we'll have cleaning staff and waste management staff. We've even got contractors out there to look at all the flora and fauna that we have to deal with in the parkland. And we will also be needing to contract snake removers because apparently there's the occasional snake roams through the parkland. So we can't move the snakes, but a contractor will come and do that. So there's all sorts of job opportunities and contracts being awarded over time.
Okay. Now, there was a question about safety and security. I don't think it was about snake bites,
Right.
but you did mention security staff, and that's obviously a bigger issue in the world these days.
Sure is.
Are there big changes there? Will people experience it differently compared to what they've been used to at other venues around Perth?
I think they'll see a difference. Hopefully they don't experience much of a difference in terms of the time it takes them to get in the venue. The venue's been really well designed from a security perspective. On the peninsula, of course, it gives us a chance to at least, we've got water on a couple of sides, and it's only the road access is pretty limited. So the stadium's been designed to be secure. There is a security perimeter, so but most of the parkland is open. It's open 7 days a week, you can roam around it. But there is a fence line at ticket points, so that we ticket and we check people away from the building itself. They pass through a ticket point. There's a random continuous wanding process, so people will be wandered as they enter the venue, which we think is the most efficient way of identifying threats and getting people quickly processed through the building. There is the opportunity if the security situation escalates to be able to have a stronger security presence there, but we think it's appropriate at this point in time to the circumstances. The roads are protected by hydraulic bollards so that we are protected from vehicles, and we also will have a good police presence. The venue actually also includes in its design a full police station. And so Waypole will be have a great presence there, and we'll have facilities to manage any sort of disruptions. But to be honest, most of the issues you have at venues are just patrons who might turn up intoxicated to the venue, and the incidence of that in Perth and around the country over the last 10 years has significantly declined, I think. And when you get venues like this, which encourage families to come along, it seriously changes the way that people behave. And we've seen that all around the country, where the incidence of alcohol-fueled misbehaviour has dropped to very small numbers. So we think this stadium will only improve that.
Okay. Now, last question, because we aim to finish by 9 o'clock for all of these events. There was a question on the screen about naming rights. Now, Venues Live has experience of this in Sydney, ANZ Stadium. Do you have thoughts on that, and will it have any bearing on how you go about your task?
It's had a bearing, yeah. So certainly the previous government had made a determination that the stadium name was going to be Perth Stadium and they wouldn't commercialise it. And the incoming McGowan government has changed that position. Their position is that there's opportunity there for them to make some money and to help the challenging budget situation in WA. And so we were tasked probably only a few months ago with finding a naming rights partner for the venue. The city changed the commercial model that we had, and Brad Patch here, who's our head of commercial and COO, one of his tasks is to restructure our commercial package, go to market looking for naming rights partners. And clearly there's a huge responsibility on us to deliver the right partner, both the right value to make it worthwhile and the right brand to make sure that it enhances the stadium rather than detracts from it. We're a long way down the track with that. We've got some serious interest. If a stadium like this, at this particular point in time, is the very best time to attract great names, and we've done that. And I think we're in the latter stages of getting ready to make a recommendation to the state on that. Okay.
Look, thanks very much, Mike. We've ranged across many topics there. You've been very open with your responses, so I appreciate that. And thanks also to everyone here for asking questions from the floor or sending them in via tweet. Adnan, I'd like to ask Paul Owen, Client Services Manager from WA Super, to come to the stage to propose a vote of thanks. And as he does that, first round of applause for Mike, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Mike, for your insights into this fabulous project. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to present the vote of thanks here today. The federal government recently introduced a bill into Parliament which, among other things, requires superannuation funds to hold annual member meetings. So what, I hear you say? Well, if the demand for such meetings is as strong as the Honourable Minister for Revenue and Financial Services would have us believe, then thank goodness that we will now have a venue big enough to accommodate all the WA Super members at once. Really interested to hear your comments about wanting to make the stadium as much as West Australian as absolutely possible. And from what I've learnt here today, it's clear to me that this is truly setting the benchmark for a large-scale venue. I guess you could call it a super stadium. And of course, we know it's for all West Australians, not just those in Perth, which is why I'm suggesting we call it the WA Super Stadium. There's something else that superannuation and a new stadium have in common, and I think you alluded this to in some of your comments about the legacies of Subiaco. Super is a long-term investment, and not everyone can see the benefit in the here and now of the moment. And I suspect some people feel that way about leaving Subiaco to move to a new stadium. But I'm sure that even the harshest of critics will see the benefit over time, and at least they won't have to wait until they retire. 20,000 glasses with a sticker on them, people have got to remove them. Maybe you need to contact the supplier and get them to put something behind the sticker and run a competition so you actually get the patrons to pull it off for you. From your earlier comments about the experiences that you've had in roles prior to taking on the Perth Stadium, it's clear to me that part of your success has been about understanding what the customer wants, and I think everybody in business in this room really needs to constantly remind ourselves that it is looking after our customer needs that's what drives our future. Putting fans first, that's an absolutely fabulous catch cry. I was talking about this at the dinner table last night with my family, and when I said I'm talking at the breakfast tomorrow about the new Perth Stadium where they've put fans first, and my youngest daughter said, "Don't they have any air conditioning?" Mike, your talk and response to questions have been eye-opening, interesting and informative. I feel I have a much greater appreciation for the magnitude of this project and the impact it will have on tourism, sport, entertainment industries, as well as the broader economic market in general. As a token of our appreciation and from Business News, please accept this bottle of Rosabrook Single Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon from the Margaret River region, kindly provided by the Calnegia Family Vineyards. Please enjoy.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you again to our host sponsor, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and our series sponsors, Bupa, Bryanberg Homes, City of Perth, EY, WA Super, and Hyatt Regency Perth. We've now got the time for the door prize. For anyone who wins, please come and see Rosie at the end of the breakfast. The Hyatt have donated one night's accommodation in a Hyatt Regency Club King Room plus breakfast for two, and the winner is, get to do this very often, Vaughan Emery from Arlington Group. And the Perth Stadium Tour Prize goes to Edwin Rays from Water Corporation. Thank you for your attendance today. Look forward to you joining us for Professor Fiona Wood in November. Thank you, and please leave your name tags on your tables or at the door on your way out. Enjoy your day.